A strange and gruesome death in Australia in which a man is believed to have killed, then cut up, and maybe even cooked his girlfriend.
On the evening of October 4, 2014, 2 police officers were called out to the brand new 113 apartments in Teneriffe, Brisbane, to do a welfare check on a newly married couple. For days, the neighbours had been complaining about this foul smell that had been wafting from their apartment, and after a very uneasy visit from an electrician, the building manager was prompted to call the police. When the police finally managed to enter the apartment in question, they were horrified by what they saw. So much so that they believed it to be a sick Halloween prank. The most shocking thing of all was a pair of human feet sticking out from an industrial-sized pot on the kitchen floor. The officers immediately called for backup. But before we continue on, let's discuss the couple that lived on the ground floor of the 113 apartments, Mayang Prosecchio and Marcus Volker. And by the way, if you are new around here, hello, my name is Sam and I cover mostly Australian true crime cases, mostly solved cases. We have a special guest today, my cat, Lola. Thought I would just bring her in the shot. And if you want to listen on the go, I do have a podcast as well. It is called Koala Crimes. You can just look that up on any of your favorite listening platform. That's enough talking from me. Let's get back to today's case. So I'm going to start by telling you about Mayang. She was born a male but grew up as a boy named Fabri. Originally from Lampung, a province in Sumatra, Indonesia, Mayang had 2 younger sisters, Debbie and Denny, and her mother, Nining, who always felt like her only son was more like a girl. Fabri had mainly female friends in school and began developing an interest in boys during high school. When Fabri confided in his mother that he wanted to transition to female, she was completely supportive and, quite frankly, unsurprised. The name Mayang was apparently inspired by one of Mayang's inspirations, Maya Angelou, who she was often heard quoting. One of her favourite quotes being, "The problem I have with my haters is they see my glory but they don't see my story." Those close to Mayang described her as loud and free-spirited with a strong love for her friends and family. So much so that when she actually did move to Australia, she sent a large portion of her earnings back to her family and actually put her 2 sisters through schooling. She also loved dogs, she loved to travel, and she spoke an impressive 4 languages: English, Indonesian, German, and French. As I mentioned, Mayang moved to Australia after her transition, and she gained employment at a place called the Pleasure Dome, which was a high-class escort agency located in Melbourne. And the Pleasure Dome describes itself as finest all-sex premium male and transsexual agency. And it was here that Mayang met her boyfriend and future husband, Marcus Volker. But the pairing was not without controversy. In fact, many of the escorts did not like Marcus. Not only was he a known heavy ice user, but he had once brought a gun to work. And on top of that, he was quite aggressive towards the other transsexual workers at the agency, which is quite bizarre considering he was dating a transsexual woman. In 2012, the couple quit the Pleasure Dome to work independently in the sex industry. And I do just want to interrupt here to say I don't want to see any hate towards transgender, transsexual, anything along those lines, the LGBTQI+ community, anything like that. And although, of course, it is important to mention and highlight Mayang's past and how she grew up and how she became who she was, it is for the most part not relevant to the story. It does have relevancy, which I'll mention towards the end, but again, I don't want to see any hate regarding these issues, or you'll be blocked. Moving on. So the owner of the agency, the Pleasure Dome, would actually later come out and speak about the pair and their situation. His name was Ivan Nell, and he would describe Mayang as a beautiful, peaceful person that was kind and trustworthy. But he believed that Marcus was taking advantage of her by taking her out of the safety of an agency and into private sex work. And by the way, every sort of comment I've seen from friends or family regarding who Mayang was as a person, they describe her exactly like this. Beautiful, kind, peaceful, caring. There's genuinely not a negative word that I have read online or from friends or anyone about this woman. She seems truly genuine and truly beautiful. So as I was saying, Ivan Nell believes that Marcus wanted to take Mayang out of agency work so he could control how much Mayang was working and also take a portion of her earnings. You see, Marcus was in quite a bit of drug debt at this time, tens of thousands of dollars in fact, and Mayang earned a lot of money per hour at the agency at about $500 an hour. So by taking her out of an agency and into private work, she could not only make a lot more money, but he could take a cut of it. So you're probably wondering who the heck this Marcus guy is. So let's talk a bit about who he was, how he grew up, his background, how he got into so much debt, and how he ended up in escort work. Marcus Volker was born in Haddon, a country town near Ballarat in Victoria, and he grew up with 3 siblings and a family that was pretty well known in the area. His father ran the local karate dojo, where Marcus earned his black belt, and perhaps this was the hobby that developed his enthusiasm for health and fitness. He also loved animals, often spoke about human rights issues on Facebook, and had a passion for food and nutrition. And it was this passion that led him to becoming a chef. And like any good chef, he had a specialty dish, bone broth. Unfortunately, Marcus did struggle with his mental health, suffering from depression and anxiety, and on at least one occasion, he did attempt to take his own life. He did start seeing a psychiatrist and taking medication for his issues, but his mental health problems did make it quite difficult for him to work a full-time job. At some point, although I'm not quite sure where in his timeline, he developed an ice addiction, and this is what led him into the substantial debt. And the only way that Marcus saw out of this debt was by going into escort work, which is notoriously quite well paid, although I do get the impression he didn't particularly want to be in it, judging by his attitude towards the other employees there. But anyway, this was a job that he did not inform his family about due to fear of judgment and fear of embarrassing his family, who, as I mentioned, were quite well known in the area they lived in, Ballarat. I do believe that some of his friends may have known, but I think it would have been quite a select few of them. After dating Mayang for a while, which, by the way, was another secret he kept from friends and family, or at least definitely his family, the pair decided to pick up and travel the world together while supporting themselves through the private escort work that they were already doing in Australia. So during this time, Marcus told his family that he was actually working on a cruise ship as a chef. This was his cover story for what would be about the 2 years he was away. And he did tell them that he had met a woman on the cruise ship that also worked on the ship, but told them little to no information about her, which apparently wasn't too out of character for Marcus. He didn't exactly divulge much of his personal life to his family, so I guess keeping all of these secrets wasn't too difficult for him. So from roughly 2012 to 2014, the couple travelled and worked together, making their way through Europe and Asia, or parts of Europe and Asia, and living in Denmark at one point as well. In 2013, the couple headed to Indonesia to meet Mayang's family and also receive their blessing for the pair to wed, which they eventually did receive. And actually, Marcus got along great with Mayang's family, and Mayang's mother had nothing but good things to say about her future son-in-law. She described him as kind and loving, shy and reserved. In our eyes, he was kind. The pair did soon marry in Europe, which was, surprise, surprise, another secret that he kept from his family. And by 2014, the pair decided that it was time to head back to Australia, but not before spending some time living in Bali, which was another place that Mayang considered home. And she would actually later say that she wanted to go back to Bali and she missed it, but she never did get the opportunity. So I do really want to discuss the dynamics of Mayang and Marcus's relationship because we haven't really touched on that yet. And given all the information you've received so far, I think you may have a few questions, especially regarding the validity of their relationship. So in that sense, I guess the answer is a bit up in the air depending who you speak to. Some people say that it was a genuine and loving relationship, and some say it was more of a transactional one. And there really is proof for both arguments. So I guess the transactional part of their relationship was the fact that Mayang helped Marcus find escort work, and of course that helped him with his debts. And in turn, Marcus was marrying Mayang, which meant that she was gaining an Australian visa. Marcus did tell at least one friend that their relationship was purely transactional and for financial gain only, to help him pay off his debts. I don't know exactly how much money Mayang, if any, was giving to Marcus to help him pay off all of his debts, and that wasn't really clear in any of the research I did. But it's of course, I have limited information at my fingertips when I am researching using resources online. I get the impression that Marcus did care for Mayang on some level. Did he love her? I don't know. And I think there was a level of love and genuine care in the relationship, but I also do believe that Marcus stayed in it for financial reasons as well. So as far as the validity of their relationship, in many ways, they functioned like a regular couple. They had joint bank accounts. Of course, they traveled together for 2 years, which traveling with somebody for 2 years that you don't like wouldn't exactly be an easy task. And they also posted photos of each other on social media. So from the outside, it did seem like a good relationship and a legitimate one. Overall, friends said their relationship was loving but could be quite volatile. The pair would sometimes argue, and when they did, Mayang was known to threaten Marcus regarding exposing his secret life to his family. And I very much get the impression that Marcus would literally do anything to keep this secret from them. Anyway, as I said, after Bali, they headed home back to Australia and they continued doing their escort work there. They advertised online. Mayang had an ad that read, "Better in real life, pictures are always real, real deal, pre-op, functional hot TS, with a great fit and a hot body to enjoy." And Marcus, who went by Heath XL online, wrote in his ad, "A young Australian boy open to all kinds of people, ages and backgrounds. I can be your companion for an hour or as long as you want for a dinner, a hot session, holidays or more." So Marcus did also find work as a chef during this time. So I get the idea that he was sort of doing escort work on the side for the extra money, but his true passion perhaps did actually lie in his career of being a chef. In September of that year, 2014, Marcus and Mayang signed a 6-month lease at the brand new 113 apartments in Teneriffe in Brisbane, and these were considered quite luxurious, high-class apartments in what sounds like a very well-to-do suburb. They were some of the first tenants to actually move in, and they chose a ground floor apartment because of their 5 dogs, which of course would have needed access to like a backyard and whatnot. But anyway, during this time, Marcus was actually beginning to struggle with his mental health again. And he actually did the right thing. He went to see a doctor and told the doctor he was suffering with poor sleep, constantly feeling lethargic, and mild depression and anxiety. He had been medicated in the past, as I mentioned, so he did request medication again to help with his issues. And the doctor prescribed him Endep. I haven't heard of it, but it is an antidepressant with sedative properties. On October 2, roughly 2 weeks after the couple move into the apartment, neighbours can hear them having a pretty loud argument at about 11:30 in the evening. Mayang is heard shouting, "Fuck you, I can't believe you," and calling Marcus stupid. And apparently Marcus could be seen, I assume, through some kind of window, just sitting on the couch and sort of staring very blankly and very expressionless at a wall as Mayang was shouting at him. 2 hours later, at about 1:30 a.m, the couple are heard arguing again, this time a little bit quieter, and after that, the neighbours don't hear anything again from the couple. So the following morning, a very strange smell starts to waft out of their ground floor apartment, with one neighbour describing the smell as if somebody had put out some dog food or red meat and left it out for a few days. Several neighbours did complain to the apartment's manager and they requested an air freshener from the foyer, but the smell did persist. Then later that evening, Marcus calls a taxi to take him to the hospital, take him to the emergency department. And the taxi sees Marcus and he's holding a finger with cloth and it's all bloodied. And he says to Marcus, "What happened? What did you do?" And Marcus just said he was cutting onions and his hand slipped, which I guess for a chef would be kind of weird, but anyway. However, at the hospital, Marcus tells the doctors a different story. He told them that his, quote, crazy girlfriend came at him with a knife during an argument. So the wound, which was so severe that the tendons in his finger had apparently been damaged, did receive the appropriate treatment that night. I don't know anything about injuries or tendons or how you treat that or if it needed stitches, but it sounded like he was going to be okay. So he was actually sent home at 9:30 that evening. So he was fine. The next day, which was now a Saturday, the apartment manager messages Marcus to tell him he needs to do something about that smell because it was still hanging around. It had been 2 days now. And the neighbours, which, as I mentioned, they were paying to live in this very luxurious apartment complex, really didn't appreciate it. Marcus responded and apologised, and he said, "Sorry, I am cooking a pig broth and he'll sort it out." But surprise, surprise, he didn't really sort it out. In fact, things just got weirder and worse as the day progressed. By mid-afternoon, this building manager, whose name was Debrina Hughes, could now smell a burning coming from their apartment as well. She was obviously concerned, so she knocked on the door. Marcus answered the door and again apologised for the burning smell, saying that he had been out and left his stock on the boil, and by the time he had come home, it had burnt out. In the evening, Marcus continued his cooking, and again the chaos continued when he managed to boil over a pot on the stovetop, and by doing so, it actually caused a power outage in his apartment. So he was forced to call a 24-hour electrician. This is what he said on the phone. "G'day, is this a 24-hour electrician? Yeah, I've got a bit of a problem. I was cooking on my stove, it's an electric stove, and the stock boiled over, dripping down, and got in the oven. It basically made this big bang and then all my power turned off. Does this sound like something you could fix today?" Soon, an electrician showed up at the 113 apartments named Brad Coyne to fix the problem. As he entered the foyer of the apartments, the smell that had been disturbing the neighbours for days now smacked him in the face, but not as much as it smacked him in the face when he actually entered Marcus's apartment. As he entered, Marcus explained the whole pig broth situation and said, obviously the smell is quite strong. But this smell was not the only thing to catch the electrician's attention in this rather dark and dingy apartment. As he walked towards the kitchen, he was walking through a carpeted area and under his feet he felt this squelching. He also saw blood stains on the carpet that Marcus told him was from his injury on his hand that had been caused by his, quote, psycho ex-girlfriend. So again, kind of another story. He's told the taxi driver he was cutting onions. He's told doctors that his psycho girlfriend has come at him with a knife, and now it's his psycho ex-girlfriend. As the electrician entered the kitchen, he saw the large industrial-sized pot sitting on the floor, the one that had boiled over and caused this power outage, as well as a few other somewhat unusual items, including a colander, bleach, and some rubber gloves. As the electrician did need access to the switchboard of the apartments to fix the problem, he needed to contact the apartment manager, who soon arrived to help him. However, when Debrina, the apartment manager, got to Marcus's apartment, he didn't want to let her in, telling her that she needed to give him 7 days' notice to enter his apartment. But she informed him that because it was a safety issue, she was well within her rights to come inside the apartment, so he reluctantly let her in. Inside, Debrina saw basically what the electrician saw, took some photographs of the damage, and left. After Debrina's visit to the apartment, as well as the lingering smell issue, she decided it was time to contact the police. So the electrician did actually fix the problem by about 9 p.m. and left, and shortly after, the police arrived to do a welfare check on Marcus and Mayang. When the officers arrived, they too, of course, noticed this smell, although it wasn't a smell they recognised, and they knocked on their door. Marcus answered, and he was pretty cooperative and seemed pretty calm, and there was no real issue that they could pick up on. So the officers had a quick chat with him, asking him about the whereabouts of his wife, Mayang, and he explained that they had had an argument several days ago and that she had left shortly after. And of course, the argument story is true because we can corroborate that with Neighbours, but Marcus said that he wasn't exactly sure where she had gone afterwards, although he did believe that she probably went back home to Indonesia, as it is somewhere that she was longing to return to. The police did inform Marcus that they were planning to enter his apartment anyway, as they had been informed about the condition of his apartment from the building manager and the electrician, and they were planning to enter without a permit. Marcus said, fine, that's okay, you can come in, but he asked if he could secure the couple's 5 dogs first, just so they wouldn't be a nuisance. And the police agreed. They said that's fine. They didn't see anything wrong with it. He had been very cooperative. He had answered all their questions. So the police gave him a few minutes to secure the dogs. So Marcus closed the front door, and they shortly afterwards heard a click of him locking the door, which is a bit sus. The officers did decide to give him a couple of minutes, maybe just to sort himself out. But it wasn't long before the building manager came to inform the police that, in fact, Marcus had escaped over the back fence, which looked pretty bad. The officers did try to have a bit of a search in the general direction in which Marcus had escaped, but in the end they decided just to go back to the apartment and have a look around and see what the situation was. So they were let in to their apartment with the master key. And as they began to look around, they started to realize the horror they had just walked into. As I mentioned at the beginning, they actually believed it was a very sick Halloween prank, given it was October. And the large pot sitting on the kitchen floor had what looked like human feet sticking out from inside of the liquid. And later on in the washing machine, in a plastic bag, more human remains would also be found. The police very quickly decided to vacate the apartment and call for backup, as Marcus was still out there on the run. It wasn't long before backup arrived, as well as a police dog to track down Marcus. And this dog tracked his scent, I should say, pretty quickly. This dog led police to a underground car park about 1 block away from the 113 apartments. And in this underground car park, the dog led police to, there was a series of industrial-sized bins, and the dog led the police to one bin in particular. Police sort of called out and made themselves known But they got no response from inside the bin, so they decided to wheel this bin out, tip it over and see what was inside, because this was where the dog was tracking Marcus's scent to. The bin lid was slowly and cautiously opened as police shouted, "Police! Armed police!" As they slowly opened the lid, they saw Marcus Volker's body was inside, laying bloodied and unresponsive. He had self-inflicted wounds to his wrists and his throat, and a large kitchen knife lay by his side. Resuscitation attempts were made, but paramedics declared Marcus dead just after 10 p.m. As you may have gathered, the remains found inside the apartment did belong to Mayang, although it did take a bit of time to identify her due to the condition of her body. And I'm, of course, not going to go into any great detail in that sense, but I will say she did die from a stab wound to her neck. She actually had multiple stab wounds, but this was the fatal one, and she was dismembered after passing away. Her remains were eventually sent back to Indonesia, and as for Marcus, his remains were sent back to Ballarat, and a funeral was held for him in which 250 people actually attended. He was remembered by loved ones as loyal, loving, and caring, with his blue eyes and cheeky smile. And not one person mentioned the circumstances of his death, understandably so. And of course, I never want to shame friends or family for the way in which they mourn and who they mourn, because of course, they believed Marcus to be a certain person, and they were mourning the person that they believed him to be. And they wouldn't have wanted him to be defined by his final actions. And of course, Marcus is not here today to defend himself or explain what was going through his head in those final days of his life and of Mayang's life. But quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, there is no defense for what he did. My thought is that she likely threatened to expose him, and he would rather have killed than have his secrets exposed. But when the police came around and he realized the jig was up, whatever that saying is, he decided to end it all. Just horrific all around. But anyway, I bring up his funeral because what really got me about the memorial were the song choices. So to farewell Marcus, they played Killer Queen, Another One Bites the Dust, and Don't Stop Me Now by, of course, Queen. Now look, maybe Marcus was a huge Queen fan. I have no idea. But for song choices, for a funeral, for a killer, time and place, like Killer Queen, really? God, it's just so inappropriate, you know? Like it makes me cringe. Anyway, even Another One Bites the Dust. Like, who plays that at a funeral? In the end, Mayang's murder was listed as a domestic abuse homicide. And the coroner actually noted at the inquest that this case serves as a massive reminder that domestic violence in the LGBTQI plus community remains largely hidden and not widely discussed. So at the very least, I suppose this case did bring those issues to light. Incredibly, Mayang's mother has since stated regarding her feelings towards Marcus, quote, "I have forgiven. No demands whatsoever or revengeful feelings because I love Marcus, just like I loved Mayang," end quote, which is an incredibly remarkable and admirable attitude from what sounds like an incredibly strong woman. And with that, I do want to thank you for being here and for listening to Mayang's story. Again, keep it respectful in the comments, rate, comment, subscribe, all the things. And until next time, stay vigilant and stay safe.